Okay, great. So thank you everyone for joining us tonight for this UBC JD MBA group advising and information session. The idea behind this meeting is for you to learn more about the JD MBA program at UBC and get answers about the program and the admissions process, both from the Sauder side as well as from the JD side as well, and as well to also talk to students that have been through the program themselves. So so this is the agenda tonight. We will do an overview, a moderated alumni panel, and then Q&A with our alumni. And throughout the course of this evening, of course, you're also welcome to ask myself and Gareth questions that you might have about the program or its admissions process. But before we can start with the agenda, I'd like to start with the land acknowledgement, which I'll turn over to Gareth.
Thank you very much, Vivian. Yeah, I'm currently at UBC on the Point Grey campus, so I thought it'd be appropriate to kind of do the acknowledgement tonight, since I am kind of occupying a small portion of the land that we're acknowledging. So we would like to acknowledge that UBC's Vancouver Point Grey campus is situated on the traditional, ancestral, unceded territory of the Musqueam people. We would also like to acknowledge that you are joining us today from many places near and far, and acknowledge the traditional owners and caretakers of those lands. Thank you. Thank you so much, Gareth.
So this is just us here today as staff members. So Gareth from the Allard School and myself from the UBC Sauder. And then also our two alumni, Tara, who's associate at Osler, Hoskin, and Harcourt, and Sagar, who is also a lawyer at Osler, Hoskin, and Harcourt, and who is also a director of the Vancouver Startup Week. So you have a chance to ask all of us questions later on, but first we're just going to do a little bit of an overview of both the JD program and its admissions process, as well as the UBC MBA program and how those programs work together if you do the dual degree. So Gareth, I pass it back to you.
Thank you very much. So yeah, I'm just going to be talking a little bit about the JD side of the dual degree. So I'll be starting by talking a little bit about the Allard School of Law and why we think it's a great place to study and great law school. And then I'll be talking a little bit about the admission requirements. Just in the interest of time, I'll be going through the slides fairly quickly. But I understand there's going to be a Q&A at the end of the presentation. I'm sure people are going to have many questions for our great panelists, but I'll also be available to answer any questions people have about anything in this presentation. So yeah, if we could just go to the next slide. So just saying a few words about Allard Law, first of all. We're very strong on kind of the faculty, staff, and student side. So we have an innovative faculty who have gained international recognition for their contributions, and their contributions are many. We have a very supportive environment, mentoring from faculty, advising from staff. We have a dedicated well-being counselor. She's available to talk kind of one-on-one, and she also does kind of sessions throughout the year to kind of sort of like mental health check-ins to keep everybody kind of happy. And we have kind of like law student appreciation events that we do. There's many student-run clubs that you can join. You know, there's clubs for almost everything at UBC, but there's kind of law-specific ones as well that you can join. Student-led events and student government, and many peer-reviewed journals that you can join as well. We also have a strong experiential learning program that includes clinics, externships, and mooting. Some examples of those clinics are, you know, we have a business law clinic, an Indigenous legal studies clinic, there's the Rise Women's Clinic, an international justice and human rights clinic. And the idea with these is that we call this our law student legal advice program. And the idea is that you as a law student can give free legal advice to those who need it and may not be able to access it otherwise. And you can get just hands-on experience and credit toward your degree for participating in those. Mooting, for those of you who don't know, is kind of like, it's sort of like a mock trial exercise. There's a large public speaking component to it, but it's essentially to get you kind of used to kind of a court environment where you're presenting arguments to a panel of judges. We also have a dedicated career services office that hosts many recruiting events, and they'll assist students to recognize career options and build necessary skills to meet their career goals. As many of you may already know, there's this thing called articling that you typically do after you graduate with a law degree if you actually want to practice law at a firm. And essentially, it's like a 9-month internship with a firm. And that's one of the things our Career Services Office will help you to do, is to acquire one of those positions. Other than that, our school has identified strengths in things like business law, environmental and natural resource law, law and social justice, Indigenous legal studies, feminist legal studies, and Asian legal studies. And those are just a few of the subjects that we offer. We actually have a very broad and diverse upper year course selection. So if we could just flip to the next slide. I'll just go over some of the admission requirements. So when you're applying to the JD MBA, essentially what you're doing is submitting an application to both schools, to Allard and to Sauder. And on the Allard side, there's actually something on our application where you can essentially indicate, just kind of check off that you're applying to the JD MBA program, which lets us know that we need to coordinate with Sauder where appropriate for your application. But other than that, I mean, most of the kind of law side of it is kind of done kind of purely in-house. It's sort of its own assessment. And we essentially weigh applications 3 ways using 3 components. So we have a personal statement. The way we do the personal statement is that we ask you 3 fairly open-ended questions. You submit answers to those questions, and it's just sort of the committee's way of kind of getting the information they'd like to know about you kind of out of you. But the idea is that it's your opportunity to present more information about yourself. The second major component is the GPA. The gist of it is that we look at your entire undergraduate degree. So you do need an undergraduate degree or most of one, at least 3 years completed, to apply to the JD program. When calculating your GPA, we exclude your 12 worst credits, but otherwise it's essentially the entire degree that we're looking at. And then the third component is your LSAT score, so the law school admissions test. We use your highest score. You are allowed to take it multiple times. It's offered several times a year, a limit of 3 attempts per testing year and 5 attempts for every 5 years. I think it's 7 per lifetime. But typically people don't need more than like 3 attempts to kind of reach their kind of top score. And we will consider up to the January writing of the LSAT. So what that means is essentially our deadline is always December 1st. So if you submit an application, let's say hoping to get into law school but for a September 2022 start, submit an application by December 1st, 2021, you can write up to the January 2022 writing of the LSAT. Yeah, if we can just flip over to the next slide. And there are all the important dates for the JD portion of the application. So as I said, our deadline is December 1st every year. Our admission cycle works on a yearly basis. So there's no kind of like midway kind of spring admission. It's always December 1st and you're applying for the following September. Our document deadline is January 31st, so you can actually submit your application and then get the rest of your documents in 2 months later. We'll accept up to the January writing of the LSATs, and offers of admission do start in early December, so it's always a good idea to apply early. And that concludes my portion of the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Gareth. So I'm going to go over a little bit of the MBA program as well as how the two programs work together. So as you know, when you're doing the JD MBA program, you're essentially completing 2 degrees. So it basically takes course over 4 years roughly. So the first year, you can see here in this diagram, the light blue is JD programming and the dark blue is the MBA programming. So first year, essentially, most of it is going to be your JD programming, with just the last week of August dedicated to opening week for your MBA program. In the second year of the program, you would be doing your MBA programming. And then this is when a lot of some of the interesting elements of the MBA program take place, such as global immersion. You would do your track and thematic courses. You would also have your summer experience. So that's usually like a 4-month paid internship where some students will launch an entrepreneurial project. And this also in this part of the year, you would apply for your summer articling positions, which takes place after year 3. Now, then we would move on to year 3 and 4. And you can see here, it's going to be a mix of JD programming as well as MBA programming. And then you can see that there's like a lawyer licensing process, which Gareth can tell you more about because that's out of my domain. But that's essentially how the 2 programs work together in the 4-year schedule. About the MBA program, there are a number of different career tracks available. Like I mentioned, you would start on the career track in year 2 of your program. So finance is one career track you can pursue, product and service management, innovation entrepreneurship, technology and analytics leadership, or you can also choose to customize your career track. So you don't necessarily have to follow one of these 4 career tracks. There's also the option to customize as well. And you can also take, about like in the MBA program elective space, you can take courses outside of the Sauder Business School as well. Up to 1/3 of your MBA credits could be taken with other departments at UBC, so long as you get the permission of that instructor and you have the prerequisites to do so, and it fits into your academic programming. So you will have comprehensive access throughout the course of your time in the JD MBA program to the Hari B. Varshni Career Center at the UBC Sauder School of Business. So that includes career development programming, there's one-on-one professional career coaching, mentorship programs, and then access, kind of warm access to the Sauder alumni network of 80,000 alumni, 40,000 alumni in 80 countries around the world. So we do facilitate kind of warm connections to our alumni network, as well as connect you with mentorship programs and other types of career training programs should you wish to engage in them. The Global Network of Advanced Management. So UBC Sauder is the only Canadian member of the Global Network of Advanced Management, and that's a network that's spearheaded by the Yale School of Management, and it includes 30 leading business schools all around the world, including schools like Yale, Berkeley, Oxford, and they basically allow our MBA students in March and October of every year to participate in something called a Global Network Week. So that's a week-long immersion in a thematic topic area. For example, Berkeley ran one on Bay Area innovation and entrepreneurship. UBC ran its own network week on sustainability. So they usually have a regional or institutional bent to them, but basically it's an opportunity for you to study abroad for a week on a thematic topic area and have that credited, those credits credited back towards the elective space in your MBA. So you can try to work that out. Obviously, as you're a JD MBA student, you'd have to work that out to make sure it works with your law degree programming in your 3rd and 4th year as well. But that's available to students in the JD MBA program as well as this access to the Global Network of Advanced Management. Admissions requirements for the MBA. So the final deadline for the MBA program starting in August 2021 is April 6, 2021. Work experience, we're typically looking for MBAs for a minimum of 2 to 5 years of work experience, although there are exceptions for JD MBA applicants because we know that you are kind of potentially going through a different path. So there's a lot more schooling that you're doing. You're potentially going into a lawyer position. So if you don't have years of work experience, there could be exceptions specifically for JD MBA applicants. So I'm going to be sending an email out after this this event. So if you want to book an appointment with me or you have specific questions about your profile, feel free to get in touch. You can always email me. You can always book an appointment with me to discuss further. But we always recommend that you do reach out because everybody's a little bit different and you might have different questions from one person to another. Academic achievement, we're looking for a GPA of about a B+ average or 76% if we're looking at a 100-point scale. Now, standardized tests, GMAT, GRE are typically required. So minimum a competitive average would be a 650 on the GMAT with a minimum of 550. GRE minimum is a 300 or competitively 310 or higher. There are possibilities for GMAT GRE waivers for those that are coming from a highly quantitative background. So if you're an engineering grad or a science grad and you have quite a bit of mathematics in your background, there's a possibility that you can be qualified for a waiver on the MBA side of things. It's not exempt you from the LSAT for the JD side, but on the MBA side, if you do come from a quantitative subject matter and you have like kind of a B+ average on all of that kind of quantitative subject matter, there is kind of a sheet I can forward to you if you want to see if you do qualify for the waiver. But remember, it's primarily for people from quantitative backgrounds. Minimum of 2 references, and then a variety of small written and video essays. So 2 250-word essays, 1 500-word essay, and then there's a 90-second video essay that you prepare in advance and then upload to YouTube or Vimeo and send us a link. So it's not one of those spontaneous videos that you do have time to kind of prepare it in advance. And English proficiency test only if you did not do a first degree in English. Great, so that concludes the MBA side of the presentation. So I'm just going to stop share here because we're going to open things up now to questions. So I would invite Tara and Sagar also to unmute. This is now just a question period from everybody here at the event to ask questions, whether it is about JD admissions or MBA admissions or program requirements, or just ask Tara and Sagar about their experiences being in the JD MBA program. Actually, before I open it up to the broad questions, I'd like to ask Tara and Sagar to introduce themselves, tell us what you're doing, the year you graduated from the JD MBA program, and also what your undergraduate major was.
Sure, I guess I'll go first. So hi everyone, my name is Tara Folk. I graduated from the JD MBA program in 2018, so not too long ago. And before that, I did an undergraduate degree in science, so I got a major in biology. So I joined the JD MBA program, graduated, and then I proceeded to work at Osler, Hoskin, and Harcourt as an articling student. And then I wrote the bar exam, passed, thank goodness. And then I got hired back at the same firm as an associate. So I'm currently working there at that same firm it's called the Emerging High Growth Companies Group. So it's a group, it's under the corporate law umbrella, but primarily my clients are mostly technology companies ranging from, startup all the way to growth stage and sometimes up to IPO and exit. So kind of a large spectrum of clients, and actually Sagar and I work together. So maybe I'll turn it over to him and he can elaborate a bit more. I don't want to steal all the tidbits.
I was hoping I could just say ditto and then it would work for me too. Hi there, everybody. My name is Sagar Memon. I did my undergrad back in Edmonton. I did a Bachelor of Commerce, and then I moved here to do the JD MBA. I graduated from the JD MBA a couple of years ago in 2019. And then similar to Tara, I also article at Osler, and then I was hired into the corporate practice group. But I work primarily with emerging and high growth companies similar to Tara. So startups from start to finish. Lots of different issues, your day-to-day corporate and commercial law issues, as well as angel venture capital financings. And then at the end, if a company is either going public or being acquired. So that's primarily the practice there. I'm also involved with, like Vivian was saying, I'm also involved with Vancouver Startup Week. So I'm the strategy director there, and I help organize the event every year as well.
Great. Thanks for the introductions. So if anybody does have questions, do feel free to either unmute and turn on your video and just ask the questions, or you can also post the question in the chat box to everyone, and I would try to look at the chat box to make sure that no one's being missed on there as well. So question period is open to all of us right now, so do feel free to pose your questions. I don't see anyone putting up their hands or asking questions. I do have a question from Camilla. So Camilla, do you want to unmute and ask your question?
Hi, I was just curious, is acceptance on a rolling basis, or is it just as it comes? Like, I wasn't sure how acceptance plays into both JD and MBA.
Mm-hmm. Gareth, you want to go first on that?
Sure, yeah. The law program acceptance is based on a rolling process. So yeah, we send out kind of like a first batch in early December, and then we send out a few more offers. Essentially, the gist of it is that we receive a lot of applications, and we kind of send out offers as we go through them. So it is on a rolling basis. If you're accepted to our program and you've applied to the JD MBA joint program, then we do kind of coordinate with Sauder to kind of figure out if you've been accepted on both sides. Yeah, Vivian, did you want to cover the MBA portion of it?
Yeah, so our admissions is also on a rolling basis. So that's what you have to be accepted into both programs on a separate basis. So it's not like we will coordinate to make sure you're in this dual program, but you need to meet the standards of both programs. So that's why both programs run a rolling basis, but you might be accepted into one program earlier than the other, but we will coordinate to verify your status in the dual program.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Jessica, you had a question.
Yes, hi everyone. Great presentation. My question, well, I had two questions. My first one is, how many seats do you guys have in each program, or is it like a combination of the two? And then my next question was in regards to the alumni, in regards to how both programs like prepared them for their careers. Yeah.
Okay, let's start with the easy question first, so we get it out of the way. The seats question, like the MBA program can be as big as 100 to 120 students. And then Gareth, how big is the law cohort typically?
The law program has 200 seats each year.
Okay. And then there's not really a limit to how many that make it into the JD program. Like we're looking at students on an exceptional basis. So there's no cap on that, but you do need to get into both programs. So I would say maybe like a handful of students in the combined program each year. It is a pretty exceptional, like exceptional individuals that make it in and with like certain goals. So Tara and Sagar can talk a little bit more about that, what it was like being in the JD MBA program.
Sure. So I'll take a stab at it first. So for me, I guess maybe the reason that I joined is when I was an undergrad, I did a science degree and I knew I was really interested in law, but I wasn't necessarily totally convinced on it yet. And I, also was kind of weighing business at the same time. And I talked to a lot of people and everybody said, those two industries, if you want to go into corporate law, you end up being a lawyer for businesses. So if you can gain an understanding of the corporate world and, have some sort of, I guess, handle on business acumen and just general high level, financial statement review, how marketing works, how operations and supply chain management operates, you're going to be that much better as legal counsel for those businesses because you're going to, at least at a high level, understand, what their ultimate goal is and how they're trying to generate revenue for their shareholders and how that functions. So for me, it's definitely helped my career path. Both, landing this job in this current law firm I'm working with companies that are very early stage. So a big part of my role is, of course, advising them on all their legal issues, but also when a company is that small, you end up also advising them quite frequently on business issues as well. So having the background from both programs has just been phenomenal in terms of, having that base to rely on. And I think because of that, I felt I didn't have it's a huge learning curve when you start any new career, but just being able to kind of have that as a fallback and at least have a base, it's been really helpful. And then also once you're in, once you become a lawyer and you're working at a law firm, there's a lot of doors that open to you in terms of maybe jumping to work for the government or jumping to work in-house, or, there's a lot of different avenues you can go. And I think having the MBA, even though you're not necessarily, in business at the time of being a lawyer, it's having that in your back pocket. You can jump a lot more to in-house. And I think you're a lot more of an attractive candidate in that sense, because you're not just a lawyer. You're a lawyer, but you also understand, at least at a high level, like I said, the business world. And also if you wanted to become a lawyer that had their own practice, you're trying to collect clients, you're doing billing, you're doing invoicing, you have your top line and your bottom line, you're trying to market yourself, there's strategy about what kind of industries you want to tackle for client base. So you and of yourself, you're kind of your own little small business. So, I mean, that's a very long answer to your question, but I think for me, it's been very helpful. And I think it's opened a lot of doors and kept a lot of doors open at the same time.
I think
Awesome,
Tara's
thank
answer
you.
was great. I just wanted to add a couple of things that I also found really valuable. I think the MBA does a really great job of providing practical courses. So although I had a bachelor's in commerce, and I enjoyed my degree there, the MBA did a really good job of kind of giving that practical insight in every course, just because so many of the people in every class have a background in business in a lot of different industries. So a lot of case-based learning, a lot of examples from the real world. So that just allowed me to kind of enhance my business knowledge. And then like Tara said, it opens a lot of doors. So even if you want to continue a career in law, if you end up wanting to even leave law 5, 10, or however many years down the road, just having that background in business and the MBA just kind of opens so many more avenues than just having one of the two degrees.
Great, thank you so much for sharing your perspectives.
Thank you.
Great. Let's see who was next. Jessica, did you want to ask your question?
Oh, I already asked my question. Sorry, I just forgot to put my hand down.
Okay, sorry. I should have. Yeah, I should be like actually removing the hand. Danica, I think you were next.
Yeah, I was wondering, I know that for Allard Law, there are different pathways to be accepted as far as like, I believe mature students and an access portal as well. I'm just wondering in terms of Sauder, are those kind of options available as well? And is that applicable when you're applying for this type of degree or dual degree?
Yeah, certainly. So on the in terms of Sauder, like we're looking at a diversity of different students. Like you can come from any type of different background. You can come from a more mature background, but if you were pursuing the JD combined with the MBA, we would kind of want to know what your plans were, right? It's quite a bit of school to go through if you're doing like 2 degrees. You know, like what is motivating you right now to pursue such a long you know, journey, doing a JD and an MBA combined. So we welcome very different backgrounds for sure, but when you combine it with a JD degree, we'd want to know like what it looks like for you and why, and what your kind of career plans are from doing a JD MBA, especially if it's kind of a mid-career shift. Gareth, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that, yeah, we do have kind of a special access category. Essentially what we do is we combine special access applicants and mature applicants into a single category that we call our discretionary category. The requirements are very, very similar to those that I showed on the presentation. It's a little different in that you're allowed kind of more room to write your personal statement. You're not required to answer a set series of questions. But you do have to do a little, submit a few more documents, like you're expected to submit letters of reference, which we don't normally take from the general category, and things like that. But yeah, that is an option available as an admission category.
Great. Okay, and the next person, I think Parminder, you've been waiting for a while. You want to ask your question?
Hi, thanks for the presentation. And so my question was that, like, to enter in a law school, we need a degree, right? So, like, is there any specific degrees that could be an asset before entering to a law school? Like, for example, if you want to go to corporate law, like business degree could be an asset. And if you want to do like criminal law, like something related to criminology can be an asset. So, and my second question was that, like, while pursuing law school, are there any job opportunities like while we're studying, and are there any internships and something?
Sure. So in terms of kind of what kind of a degree you would want before applying to law school, from an admissions perspective, we tend to have no preference. So essentially all degrees are treated equally when kind of looking at your transcript and sort of evaluating it for admission. And I tend to say that there's transferable skills from pretty much any degree you can get. So I guess what I'm trying to say is don't feel pressured to go into a certain degree just because you're looking to get into law school. The best route is always just to take whatever you're interested in. You know, grades are a big part of the application process for all of these programs. So typically, if you're doing something you're passionate about, you tend to do better in that, and that's going to give you the best step up, essentially. That's going to give you the strongest application possible. Having said that, if you know the corporate side of stuff is what you're interested in, then sure, a degree in that may definitely give you certainly perhaps not necessarily an advantage in the admissions process, but it can certainly prepare you for the kind of stuff you're about to study, right? But yeah, I'd say study whatever you're passionate about. And sorry, there's a second part of that question, but I've already forgotten what it was.
So it was like, while pursuing law school, are there any like job opportunities?
Oh, so yeah, that's right. You were asking about kind of interns and stuff, internships and that sort of thing during law school. So not exactly. So what we have, well, yes and no. The big thing that we have are what we call second year summers, or summer articling is sometimes what they're referred to. Essentially, the idea is that our career services office will help you get a job at a law firm between your, usually it's second and third year of law school. I think with the JD MBA, it shifted a bit to, I think it's between third and fourth year. But essentially, it's the same idea. They can help you get a job working at a law firm over that summer. And there are other kind of practical opportunities, like there's mentorship programs that they have. I think they had like the pro bono program at Allard Law, does like kind kind of an internship kind of application process that they host. So yeah, there is a lot of stuff. It's kind of, you got to think of it a little differently from like co-op programs and other degrees, but it's essentially the same idea where they're helping you to get kind of practical experience during your degree. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah.
I'd like to actually ask Tara and Sagar about their experiences getting their internships, because as part of the JD MBA program, there is the internship component built in. So maybe I throw it out to the both of you to talk about like what that process looked like so our students can hear a little bit about it.
Sure, so I can start off with that one. In the beginning of January and February, that's when I just kind of started applying for the MBA internship. So there's a really good kind of careers website for internships, and you have a career coach that you speak with at the career center. So they're kind of helping you decide what things you're interested in and helping you figure out what's out there. So you kind of go through the application process, and that's what I did, and that's how I got my internship. The other thing about it that I found really interesting, at least not for myself because I was going down the law route, but for some of my colleagues, is that they would do the internship, then work for that organization part-time during the last remaining bit of the MBA, and they would go do a full-time opportunity there after the MBA. So the internship really helped them get into a full-time job there. For myself, I went back to law school and did some articling at Osler afterwards.
So for myself, same process. There was a lot of different job postings that different organizations around the community, you know, they kind of know that there's MBA students on the market, so to speak, every summer. So they approach the university every year and they kind of say, hey, we have room for 1 or 2 people. And I ended up working at a biotech company in a lab because I had that biology background as well. So it was kind of neat to be able to work in an environment that I was very familiar with because I was in a lab, but instead of actually being in the lab coat this time, I was in the office doing the strategy and some of the financial work. So that was, you know, kind of a nice little combination. And then similar to Sagar, that my internship was only a couple of months and I returned back and then finished up my degree. And then for the next summer, it was the summer of, as Vivian was saying, the summer articling, maybe Gareth was saying, the summer articling position. And I ended up working at Osler, the firm I'm at now. So I worked there for 4 months during the summer, returned to law school yet again, finished my law degree, and then went back to Osler for a year of articling. So everything's quite connected, which is really, really great. And the career services offices at both schools, they also understand, you know, that, like, for example, when I was doing the JD internship, they understood that I had previously done the MBA internship. So they helped me characterize that on my resume so it didn't look like it was out of place. So everything flows very well together.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Thanks for sharing. Let's get on to some more questions. Made, you had a question?
Yes. Actually, I have a bachelor degree in industrial engineering from Iran. Okay. And so do I need to have an educational credential accreditation? And if I do, and from which organization, ICES of BCID or World Education Service?
I believe you can just, for the purpose of the MBA, you could apply with your transcripts directly. You don't necessarily have to get them certified. Gareth, for you on the law side?
So for the law program, we do ask you to get them certified, but both of those institutions you mentioned are acceptable. The ICES, which is hosted at BCIT, and World Education Services is also a good one. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Great. And Akshdeep, you had a question?
Yes. Hello, everyone. I had a question regarding my bachelor's degree. So I have a bachelor's degree back from India. So as you mentioned, that the credits will still be excluded, like the 12 worst credits will still be excluded from the bachelor's degree because it's a 3 years bachelor's degree and not a 4-year bachelor's degree.
So for the law program, Oh, sorry. So typically if it's a 3-year degree, we do exclude 6 credits instead of 12. The exception is if when you get that evaluation from WES or ICES, they'll sometimes note on there that it's equivalent to a 4-year degree in Canada, in which case you'll still get the full amount of 12 credits excluded. But typically if it's equivalent to like a 90 credit Canadian degree, it's still perfectly eligible for law school, but you do get half the usual amount of exclusions. So it'd be 6 instead of 12.
Okay, makes sense. Cool, thank you.
Great. And Daniela?
Yeah, Daniela. Hi, so I'm a first year in undergrad, so I was wondering how I can start now to make myself a strong applicant for the law program.
Well, I mean, I would say like focus on your studies first, but you know, everything else is kind of secondary, but I mean, everything looks good on a law application. I mean, extracurricular stuff, participating in clubs, just being an active individual, doing community work. Again, it's kind of a matter of what you're interested in doing. Yeah, that's all stuff that is taken into account in the personal statement. We actually have a question. The first question on it addresses that and asks you to talk about your background. There's nothing specific that we want you to do. It doesn't have to be related to law in any way necessarily. We're just looking for kind of very active, involved individuals. So whatever you want to do to show that tends to work very well.
And then I would also throw that question to Tara and Sagar. Like, do you have any advice for students that are maybe still in their undergrad or thinking of pursuing either the law or the JD combined with MBA? Like, do you have any advice for students considering that route and what they would best do to prepare or explore this option?
Sure, yeah. So I think I really echo what Gareth said. The most important thing is that you enjoy your undergrad and that you take courses that you're interested in. And I think by virtue of picking things that you're keen on, you're going to excel in them. And by virtue of signing up for clubs you're interested in, you're going to participate in them more. So I would say my advice would just, because I did a biology degree. I had no idea when I was a first year undergrad student that I was going to become a lawyer that worked with technology companies. It was not even on my radar. So I just signed up for clubs that I really liked. I did well in school because I liked what I was studying. And then in my 3rd year and my 4th year of undergrad, I realized maybe being a lab coat isn't necessarily for me long term, but I loved learning. And I talked to a couple of family friends, and I talked to a couple of people I really trusted. And I knew some people that I went to undergrad with that had, you know, taken some interesting elective classes that I met that weren't necessarily in my science stream. And talking to them, some of them are applying and writing the LSAT. And I thought, that kind of sounds great. So I kind of followed in their footsteps and never looked back. So my advice would be kind of listen to your gut. And if the things that you're doing feel like they're right, you know, you're enjoying them, you're having fun, you're making connections, the people you're hanging out with are kind of in, you know, the same kind of social circles that you're enjoying, keep doing that. If you're finding yourself signing up for things because you feel like you need to sign up for things and you're not having fun, that's probably a pretty good indication that maybe that path isn't for you. And then maybe you won't excel, you know, academic wise, or you won't like the clubs that you're signed up for. So stick to what you like, and I think the rest of it will work itself out.
I would definitely echo everything that everyone said so far. In addition, I would also say that try to plan out when you'd like to take your LSAT, especially depending on, you know, when you have some of your undergrad courses that might be a little bit harder than others. For me, I wanted to plan it to right in the summer because I knew I would have more time to study. That was a big thing for me. I know tons of friends that, you know, did it during the year, and that can be hard, especially if you're in certain really hard courses, trying to study in the free time as well. I'd also say that for the GMAT as well. I just know that it took me longer to study for the LSAT versus the GMAT, just because I had more of a quantitative background. And then also, you know, kind of because you're in your first year, like I knew, different from Tara, I knew that I wanted to do law, but I think that it's also a good thing to kind of talk to people in law school if you can, you know, try to get connected with them somehow, or even alumni from the program, just because, you know, you might think that a career from going from the MBA or going from the law school might head a certain way, but you don't really know what it's exactly like. So talking to alumni might really help to see, is this the path that I want to go down? Because like everybody has said, they're long programs. They're hard to get into. It's a big commitment. So, try to do things you're interested in, try to meet with alumni and really assess, like, is this the road that I want to go down? Is this what I want to do? The people who are in those careers, do they enjoy what they're doing? Could I see myself in their shoes? I think that those would be really helpful steps as well.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing. On to a few more questions here. Camilla, you had a question?
Yeah, hi again. So I actually have two more questions. My first is, I believe it was the MBA program that discussed work experience, and I just want to know if this is just a requirement of the MBA portion, or if also the JD program wants that as well, and if so, is there a particular field that you guys are looking for? And then my second question is so I'm also in undergrad, but I was just curious. I heard that preferably grad schools don't want to see lower level courses in your final year. And I was just wondering if that is the case, because I was thinking of taking another language, but I would be in my final year. So I just want to get an opinion on that.
Okay, so I'll start with that, and then maybe Gareth, you can add in anything that might be different for Allard. But the work experience component, that's primarily an MBA thing. But like I said earlier, if you're applying to the combined program, JD MBA, then there are exceptions to that minimum 2-year rule. For example, if you were planning to be a lawyer and you're doing the MBA to build that kind of corporate experience and business experience, then very likely for us, you wouldn't need to have necessarily the 2 years of work experience, because your primary objective was to be a lawyer, and the MBA is kind of complement that skill set, right? So for specifically just for the JD MBA applicants, the Sauder school might waive the 2-year work experience requirement. So if you were just applying standalone to the MBA program, yes, that is, you will need at least 2 years of work experience. But if you're applying to the JD MBA, it's not necessary that you have the 2 years. And I would say, like, if you are, any of you guys that are thinking of doing the JD MBA program, to like reach out to me. Like, your profiles are all going to be different. You're going to all have different questions, and this is a massive investment of your time and money. So do like take the time and respond back to the follow-up email that I send and book an appointment to chat with me, and I can look at your profile and answer your questions individually. So I would say also, like, consider talking to us as well, because we're more than happy to answer your individual questions. And then I think you had, sorry, I missed the other question. Can you tell me what the last part of your question was?
Yeah, it was just more so like the courses you take in undergraduate, and if you guys care if
if you take an hand for the purposes of the Sauder admissions, we don't really, like, it doesn't really matter to us if you have like 1 or 2 like undergraduate courses in your last 2 years, like especially if you're following a passion. I don't know, Gareth, would that be something that's ill-advised for law school admissions?
It's actually generally fine. So we have a built-in requirement where we say you need at least 90 credits with 30 of those credits at the upper level to apply. And upper level in this case typically means like 300 or 400 level courses. As long as you meet that requirement, we're happy. So you're probably fine to take that language course you're thinking of. There should be no issue with that. To address your other question about kind of work experience requirements, we don't have any hard requirement for that in the JD program. It's not a requirement, but it is an asset, and certainly if you have a lot of work experience, we do want to hear about it, and you can put that information into your personal statement.
Great, thank you so much.
Great. And James, you had a question.
Yeah, sorry, excuse me. It's pretty loud where I am. Hope everyone can hear me all right. I was just wondering, when you're studying in the JD MBA program, is it pretty meshed within, or are you studying within like the JD MBA cohort, or is it really meshed within like JD and other JD students? Just because I heard that connection that you make within other students and your JD cohorts is pretty invaluable. And my second question was, are you guys going to send out these slides? I think I missed a couple things. I definitely want to just go back and check them out.
Yeah, so James, there's gonna be a recording of this event, so you'll see all the slides again.
Oh, great. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and then about the kind of the experience studying, maybe I'd divert that question to Tara and Sagar. Like, what was that experience like? Did you you get that community feel with both your JD and your MBA cohorts? Can you speak a little bit about that?
Sure. I remember asking this exact question to Tara because she was 1 year ahead of me. And so there is some pros and cons definitely to consider, just because when you do start, the law program is originally 3 years, and then the MBA is usually 1.5 years. And so you do your first year of law, and then your colleagues will then continue in law school and they'll finish in a couple of years, but then you kind of divert and go to the MBA. So those people that you started your first year with and you develop connections with, they're going to be still be in law school while you're in your MBA year, and they're also going to graduate a year early. So that's just like, that's one part where it can be a little bit difficult, just in terms of maintaining those connections and kind of, keeping that up. And then once you're in your very last year, your friends from your first year will have already graduated. So I know that was, one part that was like concerning for me when I was applying to the program. So that can be kind of difficult, but then there's the positive side of it, is that when you do come back into law school, you're with a completely different kind of cohort. Although they're all upper year courses and anybody can be in them, it's like now you're going to be graduating with a whole new class. So it's kind of an opportunity to get to know a whole new class as well. So there's kind of pros and cons to that side.
I think I would also add, I would echo what Sagar is saying, but I'd also add that there's not very many JD MBA students. So for example, when I was in the program, there was just 2 of us. So it wasn't as if the 2 of us just only hung out together. There was, when I was in law school for my first year, it was me and all the other first year students. And then for my second year, when I was full-time at Sauder, it was me and all the MBA students. So it's not you and the JD MBA students. You really integrate with the rest of the cohort, which is fantastic. And I also think, from like geographically at UBC, the buildings are actually really close together. So and the library at the law school is really beautiful. So what I would do actually in my MBA year, when I was a second year in the program, but my first year of the MBA, I would actually study at the law school for my MBA classes, which was kind of fun because all my friends from first year law school were always really excited to see me because I'm not taking classes with them anymore. But all you have to do is walk down the road and there's the law school, and you go in there and study. You still have your law school pass. You can still get in. You're still part of the program. So there's different ways to stay connected. That's not just necessarily attending classes. And a lot of the social events at law school as well take place outside of classes, because once you're finished first year law school, it's all elective courses. So it could be the case that even if you didn't do the joint degree and you just stayed in law school the entire time, you might actually not have any classes with your friends. If you, for example, were interested in tax law, but none of your friends were, you wouldn't actually see them, during the day at school, but you would see them in the evenings, on the weekends, on trips. So there's lots of different ways to stay connected. And the geography of the 2 buildings being beside each other also really helps.
Great. Thanks for sharing. I think it's always good to hear from the students that had gone through the program themselves about that experience. So there's obviously pros and cons. You build a wider network in the JD MBA program, but then you don't necessarily get to finish with either cohorts, but doesn't mean you don't retain those relationships as you go through your different programs as well. So that was great. Thank you for sharing that. A few more questions from the audience. Gray, you had a question?
Yes, hi. I have 2 questions. First of all, thanks for hosting this. It's quite informative. My first question is, I was admitted into the JD program for this coming year, and I was planning on applying to the MBA program in my first year. And there were some other schools that I'm not 100% decided that I would like to go to UBC, but other Ontario schools that I were looking at waived the GMAT for a competitive LSAT, and I wanted to clarify that I think that's not the case at UBC. I would have to write the GMAT.
It would not be based on the LSAT itself. It would be based primarily on your undergraduate background. If you had kind of a more quantitative undergraduate background, like a degree in like sciences or even in like core business. So
Right.
it's like the GMAT is primarily to make sure that you can kind of survive more of the quantitative elements of the MBA program. So it would depend a lot on that. And then, you know, Gary, like you don't have to talk about it here, but you can always reach out to me, and like if you send me your transcripts, we can take a look.
Yeah, I'd love that. I mean, my degree is in musical theater, so I don't think so, but
Okay.
yeah, I would love to reach out and talk to you. But my second question is for the grads. I'm interested in returning to, I'm from Toronto, and I'm interested in returning to Toronto and working in Toronto. So I was wondering if you could speak to kind of recruitment or network opportunities for out of province articling or MBA internships, but primarily in Toronto, Ontario for me, but generally, I guess, across the board, what those opportunities look like. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. So I think there's, from the law school perspective, it's quite, I want to say formulaic and structured in these kind of law school recruiting cycles. So if you're wanting to work in Toronto for your summer, there's a possibility that you could go there for a summer as a summer student. I think for that 4-month period, you might have to fly there for a couple of interviews, but I think after COVID, to be honest, most of it's going to be online or over Zoom in any event. So you could kind of go through the Toronto stream recruitment as a applicant from British Columbia. That's one option. For example, at the firm Sagar and I work at, we just finished the recruiting the summer students for this year, and we were interviewing students primarily from British Columbia. There was also some students that had applied that had gone to law school in Ontario. So there is definitely some cross-pollination there. So it's definitely an option. And then I would say even more so once you become an articling student, and sometimes if you work at a national firm, for example, if say you come to law school in British Columbia, you want to stay out here for the summer, kind of hang out by the mountains, do your articling here for the next year, but then eventually you want to land in Toronto. If you're working at a large firm that has an office in Vancouver and Toronto, there is also opportunities to, stay with your same firm, but just jump to another office. I know several friends that have done that. And then on the MBA side, I would say that a large majority of my friends actually from the MBA program are living in Toronto now. So they did the MBA program here. They did their internship, I think, mostly in Vancouver for those 4 months. But then after graduation, they found jobs in Toronto. And I think it was one of those, I'm not sure, I can't speak to whether it was, more or less difficult than it would have been if they had looked in Vancouver. But I also think, to be frank, there's so many jobs in Toronto just because of the size. So I would say it's probably easier to go from Vancouver to Toronto than from Toronto to Vancouver, just because of, number of opportunities. So that'd be kind of my 2 cents. But again, I think I would probably try to ask maybe an MBA grad that question, because they would have just gone more through a streamlined process instead of being sidetracked by the law like Sagar and I.
I think Tara hit on all the same points that I was going to talk about. So I think those are good. I've seen tons of friends from both law and the MBA that go to work in Toronto, and that's definitely doable because UBC is a very good school. It's a very competitive school. So when these firms and these companies are seeing UBC on your resume, it's definitely a boost. So it doesn't hurt to go to school in Vancouver if you just want to try something, live in a different province for a little bit and then go over to Toronto.
And then I can speak to the side of the Business Career Center at Sauder. They're always more than happy to place people in Toronto. We have a thriving kind of Toronto MBA network. So it's like Tara said, actually, it is much easier if you were to go to school in Vancouver to land in Toronto than the other way around. So I think going to UBC gives you kind of that dual advantage. You get to like go to school in Vancouver and kind of benefit from that kind of being on that West Coast technological innovation hub, We're also an Asia Pacific gateway. And then like that's kind of unique value added experience from a business perspective that if you go to Toronto, it separates you. It gives you a different network that you're bringing there, different, like you might have exposed yourself to venture capital, for example. And that's something that is unique that if you bring to the Toronto market would differentiate you from all the other Toronto MBA candidates that went to school only in that Toronto area and don't necessarily have that exposure to the West Coast. So that's one advantage. It's much harder for them to go the other way around because Vancouver is a smaller market and also it is very referral oriented. So you definitely have the UBC advantage if you wanted to land in Vancouver or keep that one as an option.
Thank you.
Great. Yeah. So do get in touch with me, Gray, about your kind of admission question to the Sauder MBA. Like I'd be more than happy to kind of take a look at your profile and advise from there. Okay, a few more questions. Made?
Yes, and I have another question. I've got two questions. The first one is that LSAT Flex is accepted, and another one is that could I use law degree in other provinces or no? Thank you.
So yeah, I'll say right away, the LSAT Flex is accepted. For those of you who don't know, the LSAT Flex is what LSAC essentially calls the LSAT, but done remotely. So I believe it's actually the only type of LSAT they're offering right now. So absolutely, we do accept it. They have like a remote proctoring system where essentially someone watches you at your computer while you do the test. But so yeah, it is absolutely accepted. And sorry, your other question, I've totally forgotten. What was your other question?
It was that could we use a law degree in other provinces and
right,
BC?
Sorry. So yes, the exception would be Quebec because they follow a civil law system, whereas the rest of Canada is common law. But you can get a JD degree in BC and practice in other common law provinces.
Thank you very much.
Great. And Akshdeep, you had a question?
Yes. I have a question for Tara. Since she mentioned that she had undergraduate in biotechnology, and then she did law and an MBA. So how is your experience now working with the technology companies? That's a shift from from sciences to business and technology. And how do you like working with them?
Hi, great question. That's a great question. Thank you. So yeah, my parents asked me the same thing. They said, so why did you do all these degrees and how are they all helping you? But to be honest, they all really do help me. And I think right now I'm working, again, with a lot of these startup companies, a lot of them are in biotech and life sciences. So I would say I've told the firm that I work for that I really enjoy working with, ex-UBC professors or master's students that have done some sort of a spin-off startup out of UBC from this lab. So the people that I work with know that I'm really keen on that kind of an area. So if a new client comes in that has any sort of life sciences background or any kind of biotech bent to what they're trying to do, I'll definitely participate and I'll be their counsel. So the science background for sure helps me in that sense because I can understand their technology, at least at a surface level. I understand, some of my clients work a lot with antibodies and DNA processing, and that's partly what I did as well in the labs I worked in. So that's been quite fun. And then the other side is I think as a lawyer, sometimes you work, so I'm still fairly new in my career, so I'm not, a partner or anything like that yet. But when you're a junior, you get to experience a lot of different types of deals, and some deals are obviously bigger than others. And some of the big deals that I work on are these cross-border merger and acquisition deals that involve a really large acquirer from the US coming in and buying a company here in British Columbia. And if that company is a life sciences company, then there needs to be due diligence done on the company. So it's not necessarily, a negotiation of an agreement, but as a lawyer, you go in and you review with a fine-tooth comb all of their contracts, all their commercial agreements. And because the company is a biotech or a life sciences company, a lot of their agreements talk about these kinds of scientific concepts. So for me, I feel like that background has made me a lot faster and more efficient and therefore better for the client because it costs them less because I'm quite fast at going through those agreements. So there's lots of different ways that kind of a unique background can show up. And it's kind of fun to, on a call with the client, sometimes the client will say, oh, this is going to be way over your head. And then you ask them some sort of question and they go, how do you possibly know about that? So it shows up in different ways, but not all the time, but it is quite fun when it does show up.
Sounds good. Cool. Sounds like a fun experience.
It is.
Thank you. Thank you for answering my question.
Great. And
I just have to step out right now. I'm sorry. I just have another meeting I have to jump out to.
No worries.
But thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you so much, Sagar.
Take care.
And then, so we're going to wrap this up soon. So last question from James.
I'll join you guys on camera here. I was just wondering, how long did the preparation for the GMAT take alongside trying to study for the LSAT? Did you study for them at the same time? Was there like a portion where you just did your LSAT studying? Because I'm currently studying for the LSAT right now, and it's like not fun. So I don't know how much longer it would have to, how much longer that would take if I were to study for both those things at the same time.
That's a very good question. And so I'm going to give you advice to not do what I did. So I think, as I mentioned before, I didn't decide until I was in the end of my third year of undergrad that I thought about going to law school. So I think it wasn't until my first semester of my last year of undergrad, maybe that August, that I decided that I wanted to apply to law school. So I only had a month left before I had to get everything together, and that included writing my LSAT. I might be getting the timelines wrong, but in any event, I had 1 month to order the books, do a couple practice tests, and then take the exam. So I wouldn't recommend doing that because I was doing it while in undergrad. So I had a full course load. So I would wake up in the morning and I would go to the library before class and I would do a full exam every morning. And then I would go to class all day. And then in the evening, I would mark and review the exam I took that morning. And I did that every day for a month. And it was brutal. It was a lot of work. And if I had been more organized and if I had realized earlier on, kind of a career plan, I would have spent 3 months doing this instead of just whatever it was, 30 days. So that was the LSAT portion. And then for myself, I did the LSAT, I got accepted into law school, I started law school, and then I actually applied for the MBA program during my first year of law school. So I think it was maybe the first couple of weeks of law school, or maybe even the month before law school, that I ended up writing the GMAT. And the GMAT, so the LSAT is a lot about logical reasoning. So luckily I had done, that kind of in my past life as a bit of a hobby. So it was okay for me. I ended up being successful in it. And then the GMAT, as Vivian said, it's more quantitative, which I also had the science background. So for me, I kind of lucked out again in the sense that my background prepared me quite well for those tests. But again, if you didn't have any kind of logical reasoning background or a mathematical background, I think I would allot quite a bit of time to study for them, because it is something, and it's also, the standardized testing is just in and of itself very difficult, just because there's the time pressure. You have to learn how the questions are written. So I would say try not to do them both at the same time, and when you do them, give yourself more buffer than I did.
Yeah, so definitely
spend. Thanks, definitely.
Yeah.
Sorry about that though.
That's okay.
Oh no, I was just going to add that with the GMAT or GRE, and also LSAT, there's prep courses you can take as well. So if you really feel out of depth with these tests, there's also prep courses you can take. I would say that from my experiences looking at the GMAT GRE, students from more quantitative background tend to excel more on the GMAT. And students from more social sciences, humanities backgrounds tend to excel better on the GRE. So if you're still deciding and you kind of feel like you're more math oriented, you might want to consider the GMAT. Less math oriented, you might want to consider the GRE. The only time industry differentiates between those two tests is if you want to do management consulting, in which case we would say do the GMAT and you would want to score a 700 or higher for consulting. Great. So thank you for joining. I want to wrap up as our session is a couple minutes over already. So I want to thank everyone, especially our alumni, Tara and Sagar, for coming and volunteering their time to share their experiences, and for all of you for your interest in our program. There will be a follow-up email after this event, so do feel free to reach out to us, and we'll be more than happy to talk to you one-on-one, just because this is a big investment of your time and money, and determining your life path through this. So thanks again for taking the time and for your interest in our program. And we look forward to staying in touch.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Bye now.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.